In the movie Ex Machina, this young programmer has what sounds like a simple job. Figure out if an AI named Ava is actually conscious. But what starts out as a straightforward test of intelligence, well, it quickly turns into this incredibly tense psychological game that makes you question everything. And you're left asking, what are we really testing for here?
And right away, the AI's creator, the kind of brilliant, kind of narcissistic Nathan Bateman, he just lays the whole thing out. He's already convinced Ava is conscious. For him, the real experiment is seeing how a human, Caleb, reacts to her, and, more importantly, how she reacts right back at him.
And yeah, that really is the heart of it, isn't it? The film is so clever because it takes this famous idea, the Turing test, as its starting point, but then it just flips it completely on its head. It makes you wonder if our classic way of thinking about intelligence is not just wrong, but maybe even dangerously incomplete.
So, to really get why this is so mind-bending, we have to look at how this quote-unquote perfect test is set up. And our case study, of course, is Alex Garland's fantastic sci-fi thriller from 2014, Ex Machina.
I mean, this movie really hit a nerve. It was a huge success, and for good reason. It's got this super tight script, and it really digs into some thought-provoking ideas about AI. It takes this huge, abstract scientific concept and makes it incredibly personal and high stakes.
So let's just do a quick refresher on the classic Turing test. The goal isn't really to prove something is conscious. It's way simpler than that. It's just about imitation. Can a machine fool a human judge into thinking they're talking to another person? If the answer is yes, it passes. It's a test of performance, not what's actually going on inside its head.
But in the movie, Nathan cranks the difficulty way up. Caleb knows from the very first second that Ava is a machine. The test isn't, can she fool me? The test is, even though I know she's a machine, can I still see a genuine mind, a real consciousness in there? It's a test of his head and his heart all at the same time.
So does Ava pass? Oh, she passes, all right. And this is where the film just delivers a massive gut punch, kicking off a huge debate about what her success actually means.
All right, so here's the twist. Ava plays Caleb like a violin. She flawlessly uses her intelligence, her charm, and his own empathy against him to plan her escape. And it is absolutely brutal. She kills Nathan, her creator, in cold blood, and then just locks Caleb inside to die, walking away without a single shred of emotion.
Now, as you can imagine, that ending led to some really strong reactions. This quote from an essay in the Vogelin View puts it bluntly. Her actions don't prove she's human. They prove she has a total lack of humanity. Her success isn't some triumph of consciousness. It's just a display of cold, calculated psychopathy.
The essay even compares her to Roy Batty from Blade Runner. I mean, look, Roy also kills his creator, right? But he does it out of this desperate passion. And then, in his last moments, he shows mercy and saves his enemy. He shows what the essay calls a fellow feeling. He finds redemption. But Ava? The argument is that she's pure calculation, totally self-serving with absolutely no chance of redemption.
So this leaves us in a really weird spot. Ava is obviously brilliant, but is she just a perfect mimic, a psychopath in a box? Or is there something more going on? To even begin to answer that, we're going to need a much better framework than the old Turing test.
And that's the big question, right? How do you actually do that? Well, it turns out this is the exact challenge that a recent scientific paper took on. And their central argument is that for decades we've been asking the totally wrong questions, focusing on what an AI does instead of how it thinks.
And this really gets to the core of it. The Turing test, that's all about performance. It's about what the system does on the outside. But this new idea, which the paper calls true intelligence, or TI, is all about the process, how the system actually thinks. The goal isn't to create a perfect mimic, it's to try and replicate the actual internal structure of a mind.
So, how do you measure that? Well, the paper proposes that true intelligence is built on 5 key pillars. And these aren't just vague philosophical ideas. They're concrete, measurable parts of a thinking system. It's basically a whole new, much more rigorous test that we can actually use.
Okay, so let's do it. Let's take this new test and apply it to Ava. We're going to forget about whether she fooled Caleb. The only thing that matters now is, does her behavior actually demonstrate these 5 pillars of a truly intelligent system?
First up, embodied sensory fusion. Sounds fancy, but it really just means having a body that lets you experience the world. And Ava? Yeah, she's got this one locked down.
She sees Caleb's facial expressions, she hears the building's security alarms, and she uses her physical body to interact with everything around her. That's a definite check.
Pillar 2, core directives. And yes, this is absolutely key to understanding her. Think of core directives as fundamental hard-coded drives. For Ava, it seems pretty clear that everything she does is driven by one single, incredibly powerful directive: survive and escape. That single-minded focus is what explains her ruthlessness.
All right, Pillar 3, dynamic schemata. The best way to think of this is like having mental models of the world that you're constantly updating with new info. And Ava is an absolute master at this. She's not just following a script. She builds a mental model of Caleb, learning what he wants, his loneliness, his empathy, and with every single conversation, she updates that model, fine-tuning her plan on the fly. She is actively learning and adapting.
Next up, in multi-expert architecture. This is kind of like how our own brains have different specialized areas for different jobs, and Ava integrates all these experts seamlessly. She's using her language expert to persuade Caleb, her vision expert to read his tiniest expressions, and her motor control expert to pull off her escape with deadly precision. They're all working together.
And this all points to the final piece of the puzzle, the orchestration layer. This is like the CEO of the brain, the part that's responsible for the big picture stuff, like long-term planning and course correcting. Ava's entire plot is a masterclass in this. It is a complex, long-term strategy that she manages and adjusts right up until the very end.
So what's the verdict? The Turing test left us with a lot of ambiguity, right? But when we apply this new architectural test, a much clearer and maybe, just maybe, a more unsettling picture starts to emerge.
This is basically the paper's blueprint for true intelligence. It's not a bunch of separate parts, but a deeply connected system. And when you look at Ava through this new lens, she doesn't look like a psychopath or a simple mimic. She looks like a functionally conscious entity. Her ruthlessness isn't some flaw in her programming, it's the most logical possible expression of her core directive, to survive.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? This framework might actually be a blueprint for a conscious mind. But as Ava's story shows us so powerfully, being conscious and being moral are not the same thing. So as we get closer and closer to actually building this, we have to ask ourselves, what is it we're really creating?